Senator, you know, you're trying to compare apples and oranges, and I can't...
Well, it's agriculture.
No, you're trying to compare apples and oranges, and you're talking about other universities that have had incidents. I cannot say off the top of my head, without researching those particular instances, as to what the response from the university actually was. If you're equating CUNY's response, which was weak up until now, with their responses, I can't compare those because I don't know what they were. But I will tell you that we do not condone any kind of racist activity, any kind of prejudicial activity, but I think that you're trying to compare different incidents which maybe do not equate to the same level, or you're not letting us know what the university's response was, how rapid it was, what exactly they did to address each situation. So until you do that, you know, I can't really comment on what you're putting forward.
Let me just ask one
I'm going to
quick...
request the
Would
members
Senator
direct.
continue to
I'm going to
yield?
request the members direct through the chair during debate, please.
Would the senator continue to yield?
Yes, through you,
Senator
Mr.
yields.
President.
Was this reasoning that you outline in your Article 7 in Part C in the governor's original proposal? Did he cite the anti-Semitism as the cause for
what we're saying, and I guess I will read some of the incidents that have occurred at CUNY campuses, you know, if you really want to go there. At John Jay College, which specializes in criminal justice, Jewish students have been the target of so many slurs that at least 3 have transferred. One John Jay administrator responded to a Jewish student's concerns by saying, "What are these white kids complaining about?" On November 12th at Hunter College, during a demonstration for free tuition, Jewish students were denounced as racist sons of, I'm not going to say the word, fascists and Nazis, and were greeted with comments such as "Jews out of CUNY." One student tweeted at the time, "Full-blown anti-Semitism allowed at my college. I witnessed this and froze in fear." At Brooklyn College, the pro-Palestinian group disrupted a faculty meeting last week and called a professor wearing a yarmulke a Zionist pig. At the College of Staten Island, a pro-Palestinian demonstrator told a Jewish student last November, "I don't hug murderers." Swastikas also deface the college's desks and walls. These are the things that have been happening at CUNY, and these are the things that the Senate Republican Conference is saying are intolerable and need to be addressed.
Would the Senate, on another subject, would the senator yield?
Certainly.
Senator yields.
Last June, we passed a maintenance of effort legislation almost unanimously. It included the assumption of fringe benefits and building rental, and so forth for both CUNY and SUNY. The governor vetoed it on the basis of including it in budget negotiations. Have any of those costs been restored in your budget resolution?
Yes.
Which
the
ones?
language is in there.
Would you, Senator, continue to yield?
Yes.
Senator yields.
Yes.
Which
She's inquiring as to which.
items have been restored?
All of those, right? The maintenance of effort, all has been restored.
It's
Fringe benefit, hospital subsidy, salary increases, and actually it includes other mandatory costs.
Let me ask one last question, because my time is almost up.
Sure.
Senator yields.
One of the interesting programs, if the senator would yield.
She does.
Okay. One of the serious problems at the CUNY community colleges is the long period it takes for students to graduate. 17% of the students graduated in the community college level graduated in 3 years. CUNY had a program called ASAP. $2.5 million was taken out of the budget for the ASAP program. But those students who participated in the ASAP program, their 3-year graduation rate was 57%. Stories have been written about the program in the New York Times. It's been praised widely. President Obama has cited the ASAP program as a jewel, and yet it has been eliminated from your budget resolution. Can you explain why?
It wasn't eliminated from our budget resolution. The executive did not restore it.
And you did not restore it?
The executive did not restore it.
Thank you, Senator Young. On the bill, very briefly.
Senator Stavisky on the resolution.
On the
briefly.
resolution, I'm sorry. I find this very troubling in terms of penalizing students, because CUNY has been the door to educational opportunity, to economic improvement. It has been such an important aspect, particularly for the immigrant community. City College goes back to 1847, and it was founded in 1847 to educate the sons of immigrants. And that mission really hasn't changed. CUNY has been the stepping stone to for so many people. So many of our relatives graduated from the City University of New York. And to subject it to a $485 million cut, and who determines the trustees, to me, is less important than the effect it's going to have on students looking for a job. And I respectfully request that in final budget negotiations that this cut be restored. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Squadron.
Thank you, Mr. President. If the sponsor would yield.
Senator Young, do you yield? Senator yields.
Thank you. I'd like to talk about S6411. This was the governor's ethics reform package. I noticed that in the resolution it says the Senate will consider modification to the governor's good government ethics reform package. Talks a lot about a full-time legislature, some other issues. What does the Senate resolution say about any changes to campaign finance law?
I'm sorry, what's the ending of your question, Senator?
What does the resolution say about any changes to campaign finance law?
We reject the taxpayer-funded campaign finance plan that was put forward by the governor. And the reason that we do is that taxpayers in the state do not want their hard-earned tax dollars going to fund politicians' political campaigns, paying for robocalls, paying for negative advertising. And frankly, the New York City system that exists right now has had several instances of corruption, whether it's aides to John Liu, whether it was Anthony Weiner, whether it was Malcolm Smith. There have been several instances that are associated with the public financing of campaigns, and that's why we believe that this is the wrong way to take.
The sponsor will continue to yield.
Certainly.
Sponsor yields.
Any other major portions of the governor's ethics reform proposal that have been rejected by the Senate majority?
Yes, there is another one that was rejected, and that has to do with outside income and job. But I do want to tell you that we have put in several proposals that I think would be very meaningful. And by the way, I do want to remind the senator that this body has passed forfeiture of pensions for public officials who are convicted of corruption. And unfortunately, the Assembly has chosen not to advance that proposal. We believe that that would go far in addressing much of the unfortunate incidents that have occurred in this state. We also advance a proposal for increased disclosure of sources of funding for lobbyists and clients. We advance reforms to ensure that the Senate Ethics Committee provides meaningful oversight and guidance to members and employees of the Senate related to ethical conduct, best practices, and adherence to Senate policies. The Senate also would consider amendments to the Constitution to allow the legislature to have 4-year terms, because there seems to be a concern that's been raised about continuous cycles of campaigning. The Senate will consider whether a political consultant should be permitted to register as a lobbyist. Legislation which would ban such practice has previously passed the Senate. The Senate advances a proposal to require members of the Regional Economic Development Councils to be subject to the Code of Ethics and financial disclosure requirements in the Public Officers Law. We feel that this is a very important advancement. The Senate denies the executive proposal to subject the legislature and Legislative Ethics Commission to the same Freedom of Information Law provisions, which you may ask about that too, which executive agencies are subject. The legislative process is inherently open to the public for input, scrutiny, and review. And in contrast, the public is made aware of many executive agency activities only after they occur. And as such, for purposes of Freedom of Information Law, these branches are treated differently. And I do want to stress that that's how it's done on the federal level also. The Senate advances a proposal to provide attorney's fees when an agency unreasonably denies a Freedom of Information request. And the Senate advances a proposal that limits the time state agencies would have to appeal Article 78 Supreme Court judgments against them for violations of the Freedom of Information Law. And the Senate believes the comprehensive ethics reform must ensure that the public trust is restored in government. So we have several measures that we are putting forward as far as ethics reforms go.
The sponsor will continue to yield.
Yes.
Thank you for reading that last line of the resolution. Comprehensive ethics reform must ensure the public trust is restored in government. When you look at things that have led to doubt of the public's trust and have led the public for good reason to wonder who folks in Albany are working for, the two major issues are one that I appreciate the sponsor was clear was left out, which was any limitation on outside income beyond what exists today. And secondly, as I read it, any closure of the LLC loophole or mention of the LLC loophole is also left out. Is that correct?
Yes.
The sponsor will continue to yield.
Yes.
During
Yields.
last year's LLC debate, and I know there's a certain Groundhog Day feel probably to my standing and talking about this issue and to the debate we're having. In last year's debate, the finance chair at the time said, I don't think it's a loophole. It's a way to raise money in a campaign, and if it's in use by everyone, that's not a loophole. Is that the view that the current chair of finance shares?
I can't comment on last year's debate. I'm sorry, I don't remember it from last year. But I will say this, that if we do any reforms along those lines, that it has to be across the board, and it's not even playing field otherwise. And so that's what we would have to look toward.
The sponsor will continue to yield.
Yes.
Sponsor yields.
So does the sponsor believe that the LLC loophole is in fact a loophole that allows corporate entities to be treated as individuals for purposes of big money contributions to politicians?
Through you, Mr. President, I don't believe that it's actually a loophole, and it's the law, and so people should adhere to the law.
Sponsor will continue to yield.
Yes.
Sponsor yields.
And just a brief point of fact, I don't in fact believe that it is the current law, and am party to a lawsuit to that effect, but it is the current practice. And to move on to my question, does the sponsor feel that since last year's debate, when we talk about restoring public trust in government, there have been any activities or anything that's happened that should cause the majority conference to revisit its longstanding unwillingness to close the LLC loophole?
Through you, Mr. President, as I stated previously, we have taken several actions in this House. One has to do with the stripping of pensions from public officials. Unfortunately, the Assembly has failed to do that. That's why we put together this whole package of ethics reforms that we feel would be very relevant to making New York State be able to move ahead on these issues.
The sponsor will continue to yield.
Sure.
Sponsor yields.
So from that response, it sounds as though the corruption trials of the leaders of both houses of the legislature, including the person who was the leader of this House at the time of last year's budget debate, in which outside income and the LLC loophole figured prominently does not cause the sponsor or the majority conference to believe that that longstanding position should be revisited?
Through you, Mr. President, I think that we've taken action along those lines, and it not only deals with pension stripping, but it also deals with term limits for legislative leaders. I think that if we're able to get the other house to agree to those things, that would solve a lot of the issues that have come forward in recent history.
The sponsor will continue to yield.
Yes.
Sponsor yields.
Thank you. In the fall, my office put out a report showing over 11,000 LLC contributions to political committees from January 2014 to January 2015, totaling more than $20 million, including 22 different LLCs contributing nearly $2 million that listed 1,200 Union Turnpike in New Hyde Park, New York, as its address. Does the sponsor think that that is an important factor when we talk about restoring public's faith in our government?
Through you, Mr. President, I would have to look at the report. I haven't seen it.
The sponsor will continue to yield.
Yes.
Sponsor yields.
I noticed that the majority leader said, and I appreciated hearing this at the opening of today's debate, that conversations have to take place when it comes to ethics reform moving forward. I know we heard the same thing last year. In fact, shortly after Leader Flanagan was elevated to that role, he said the same thing in regard to the LLC loophole. At the time that a committee took up closure of the LLC loophole after the budget, there was some suggestion there would be further conversation about that bill before it was subsequently muzzled. Does the sponsor believe that conversations do have to take place this legislative session in public about closing the LLC loophole?
Through you, Mr. President, I believe that we will continue to have discussions about ethics reforms, and as I said, we have passed some things so far, and we'll continue to consider other measures.
The sponsor will continue to yield.
Yes.
Sponsor yields.
I don't mean to repeat myself, but I just want to be very clear. Should those conversations, through you, Mr. President, should those conversations include public discussion of closure of the LLC loophole and limits on outside income?
Through you, Mr. President, as I said, we will be looking at all different proposals that are out there and having a discussion about those measures.
The sponsor will continue to yield.
Yes.
Sponsor yields.
When we talk about ethics reform, it seems that severe and significant consequences for violations of the public trust are important. Pension forfeiture speaks to this. I think that preventing such actions is also important. Does the sponsor feel that we need to be passing provisions urgently this year in this year's budget that change the culture of Albany to make wrongdoing less likely?
Through you, Mr. President, as I said, we have passed, for example, stripping of pensions for public officials who are corrupt and have been convicted. I think it's those types of measures that go very far in being deterrents. But at the end of the day, if somebody's going to take a bribe, for example, there are already a lot of laws against that, and that's been proven as people have gotten into trouble and been convicted. So we're taking action. We've taken action. We'll continue to take action along those lines. And we want to do common sense things that are meaningful not only to the process here in Albany, but also to the people in New York State. And I will tell you, when you talk to individuals across the state about wanting the pension strip from public officials, that is something that people overwhelmingly support, and that's why I'm so happy that we have taken action along those lines.
The sponsor would yield for a final question.
Sponsor yield to a final question. Yes.
I agree about pension forfeiture. As my conference, I believe, has voted in favor of as well. just to be clear, as conversations happen in the majority conference about what folks are hearing around the state, are folks hearing that treating limited liability companies like individuals so as to allow small numbers of heavily invested interests to contribute unlimited and often anonymous sums is something that people around the state support?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that again?
The majority conference here around the state that allowing limited liability companies to be treated as individuals so that they can contribute unlimited and often anonymous sums is something that people support.
Through you, Mr. President, that isn't something that I've heard from one constituent in my district about, but I would like to, am I allowed to ask him a couple of questions?
Senator Squadron, do you yield?
Of course.
Senator Squadron, part of our package that we have put forward would actually consider whether a political consultant should be permitted to register as a lobbyist. Legislation which would ban such practices previously passed the Senate. Now, there are different organizations out there that routinely use firms that do this. Is that something that you support?
The sponsor said that that bill has been through the House, so I will look at how I voted on it and let you know.
But if it's something that, for example, you know, somebody, maybe you voted on it, but you actually are somebody who maybe would utilize that in practice, is that something that should be looked at?
The sponsor would clarify if I would utilize what in practice?
So for example, you know, if that's something that a certain group actually did routinely, is that something that you would be willing to denounce today then, if that's a measure that you support?
Sorry, if the sponsor would just describe the activity?
I'm just saying that that's part of our proposal, that whether a political consultant should be permitted to register as a lobbyist.
Whether political consultants should be allowed to register as lobbyists?
And then whether, you know, certain groups actually use lobbyists and political consultants that do both.
I'm having a little trouble understanding the sponsor's question.
Okay, so I guess
I think
you're not
those
going to answer it.
who lobby on legislation, resolutions, state action must
Okay,
register
so I
and
guess you're not,
register
that's fine,
as well.
Senator, if you're not going to answer it.
As
that's
well,
fine.
Mr. President,
Senator?
thank you. As well, I think it's critical that anyone who is exerting influence in those kinds of direct ways register. In the case of this bill, the sponsor said a bill referenced in the resolution has moved through this House. Rather than us sort of try to find the right words for it, I said I would get my voting record on it and share it with the sponsor.
Senator Young, do you wish to ask Senator Squadron if he continues to yield?
No, I think I'm done. Thank you,
Okay,
Mr.
Senator
President.
Squadron, then you have the floor.
Thank you. On the bill.
On the resolution, Senator
Resolution.
Squadron.
Thank you, Mr. President. I did that last year as well. Thank you for clarifying 2 years in a row. I'll see you at the same time, same place next year. Hopefully different outcome.
Take a vote on that.
Different places, just to be clear. Mr. President, when you look at this resolution and you look at the governor's budget proposal, there is a significant spending component, and of course that's a critical portion of what we do up here, critical and related policies. The budget is our opportunity to not just ensure the state spending is effective and efficient and makes the best use of the taxpayers' dollars. It's also an opportunity for us to really get at the core of our state government and how it functions. In fact, approving a spending plan well over $100 million, over 150, to without also cleaning up state government and creating people's faith or recreating people's faith in state government is an enormous mistake. And that's what this resolution risks doing. We heard repeatedly about the pension forfeiture issue. To be clear, that is something that I have voted for. Many members of my conference as a whole has voted for. We believe that's important. However, that does not get at the core of what we've seen in the most disturbing cases out of this House and the other House in recent years, since this time last year. This time last year, the former Chair of Finance and I had a spirited conversation about the destructive influence of the LLC loophole on state politics and government, on the fact that corporate entities should not be treated as individuals, should not have the ability to contribute unlimited sums. Subsequently, a significant corruption trial, federal corruption trial, on the former leader of this House and the other House proceeded, and lo and behold, the LLC loophole figured prominently. And yet, when it comes to fixing the LLC loophole, when it comes to doing something about the kind of influence, pernicious influence that it has, we're in the same place we were last year. We're hearing about the very, very weak tea of ethics reform that wasn't rejected from the governor in this resolution. But we're not hearing even a commitment to have public conversation about closure of the LLC loophole. We're not hearing even a commitment to have a public conversation about the influences of outside income. You know, if a fire is raging in someone's living room, you don't go into the kitchen and unplug the toaster. You go into the living room and you put out the fire. But that's not what's happening here at all. And the problem is that people's faith in our government has been destroyed. And it will not be able to be rehabilitated until we do something about these core issues. That's why, despite a number of good things and some other things I'm concerned about in this resolution, there is no way I can vote for a resolution that yet again is going to let a status quo that has done so much damage continue in Albany. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Rivera.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the senator yield?
Senator yields.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to, some of my colleagues have gone through different areas that I might want to come back to when I'm speaking on the bill, but for now, I have a couple of questions regarding the health portion of the resolution.
Sure.
Let's start out through you, Mr. President, with the Medicaid growth formula. Could you explain to me what this particular budget resolution does regarding the Medicaid growth formula as it relates to the governor's proposal?
It's the same.
Through you, Mr. President, the sponsor will continue to yield.
Sure.
Sponsor yields. Can I have some order in the House, please? If you could take conversations of staff outside the chamber, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. And what is the fiscal impact that would have on the city's budget?
Talk about the actual figure. The actual figure is $182 million, and it's the governor's proposal, but the governor has publicly stated that he would work with the city on this issue.
Through you, Mr. President, the sponsor will continue to yield.
Yes.
Sponsor yields.
As you stated earlier, Senator, the Senate Majority Resolution accepts this. The question that I have is, what is the reasoning behind this shift of cost?